So the extent to which the American worker, Wall Street Apes tweeted this out. So now, because the word is out and everybody's scared that the ICE is coming for everybody, they're not showing up to work.
Oh, look, all the jobs.
So
those guys did want their jobs. This is years ago I saw them. We did a pilot for Comedy Central, upstate New York, family-owned construction company. All the work was going away because these companies would hire illegals to do it. They explained it very patiently. Nobody for some reason respects that.
I saw a video today. I can't believe I didn't grab it for the show, but there is a bakery in Central Illinois, and the guy says there's 3 factories here, and the parking lot's full, and we're at shift change right now, and it's empty. And so now you're not going to be. There's going to be a shortage in bread. There's going to be a shortage of whatever they bake there.
I bet you better start hiring.
Because they're hiring illegal immigrants. Why? Because that's good for business. You could pay them less. They can't organize. They can't form a union because they're not here legally. And so that's a gift to corporations. And the people that they can't bring in illegally, they give an H-1B visa to, just as what Joe Biden did for truck drivers. So now truck driving companies are importing foreign workers to drive trucks because there aren't enough truck drivers in America. There aren't enough talented enough to drive trucks in America. No, it's to drive wages down.
Yeah, well, Jimmy, it's even if you're a company that isn't that big of a scumbag, the government was purposely funding programs to make you do that.
That's right.
You see how much worse that is? That's actively trying to destroy you.
So to the extent at which the American worker has been replaced by cheap illegal migrant labor is shocking. This job site employee is reporting only 8 out of 43 workers showed up for work due to immigration checkpoints and raids. This is where all our jobs have gone, to illegal. So I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that is why, as Bernie Sanders said in 2014, before he got the woke mind virus, that open borders is a billionaire scheme. He called it a Koch brothers scheme. It's to drive wages down and undermine unions.
Because it is. It was a Republican invention, the sanctuary city. They love that idea. And that's why it was a Koch brother. Here, if you're a dumb shit liberal, hold Koch brothers are bad in your head. And now remember that that's their thing they want. Imbeciles.
So here's
you have to qualify this.
So there's the construction site. 8 out of 43 guys showed up for work due to the immigration checkpoints and raids.
Of course. Were people going to not go for the cheaper labor option, especially a company? If I run an NGO, right, like the Open Society, I'm part of the Good Club with Bill Gates and Oprah, and we're thinking ways to get you down to eating bugs or whatever the hell. That's how you do it. The buses of illegal military-age men coming in, that was a Catholic NGO. Okay, so this isn't just like people sneaking in for a better life. This was on purpose. That's why they're being so fast getting criminals out, because they purposely let them in.
So Wall Street Apes tweets this out. Illinois resident says, I live next door to a 24/7 bakery factory. Oh, here, I'll just play it for you. So you see this? Okay.
Hey guys, so if y'all think that the people are fear-mongering about food and our communities running out of food and there being a big balloon and there being economic problems, this is in Central Illinois. This factory, which is next door to my home, is the Bimbo Bakery factory, and next door to it is 2 more factories, and then across the street is another factory. This parking lot should be full. This factory runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is 5:30.
And that exhaust there is just ventilation.
That's just the ventilation. This would typically
be full. There should be a huge smoke column somewhere right around here going that way with the production oven.
And if you look at that parking lot, it is empty. This is shift change. It is the middle of shift change. And the entrance to the parking lot is right there. And this is our only street in and out of town to get over there. And as you can see, there are no cars. So this is our bakery. Bimbo Bakery. They make things like the English muffins. So expect there to be a fucking problem when it comes down to our food in the next upcoming months.
Oh no, the slaves aren't there. How will I get my food?
So the same people who scream about raising the minimum wage, and I'm one of those people. I'm all for raising the minimum wage. You know me, I'm a lefty. Because the minimum rate, when you raise the minimum wage, it actually helps the economy. People think it does the opposite. It forces people out of business. It doesn't. It actually has the opposite.
I figured it out, Jimmy, 20 years ago when every time they had this argument and raised it, it was fine. That's when I put it together.
Yeah. Every time they raise the minimum wage, actually, I know the president of Wetzel Pretzels said, yeah, I used to be against it. Because, but now every time they do it, my business goes up. Yeah, because people have more money in their pockets and it increases. So anyway, it's actually not bad for the economy. So I'm for that. But the same people, so a lot of those same people, not me, a lot of the same people who scream you got to raise the minimum wage also are upset that we don't have enough slave labor. They're like, oh my God, who's going to pick your fruit? Who's going to, remember Ozzy Osbourne's daughter? Who's going to clean your toilets? Who's going to do this? So
she sounded like an Episcopalian lesbian bishop talking to Trump.
Yeah. Please don't
free the slaves.
So you want people here who are vulnerable to the capitalists. You want them here so they can be exploited. But at the same time, you want to raise the minimum wage. But you're upset that someone's getting rid of the people who are being exploited. Because that's what that is. Why do you think they're hiring only illegal aliens? Because they're being exploited.
If it causes an English muffin shortage, shouldn't that tell you, wow, the scale of the utter corruption and problem is so big, we're not going to have English muffins for a few weeks. That must be a really big problem. I'm glad it's getting taken care of. That guy Bukele did it, and their GDP, which is not even the thing that I would hinge everything on, went up from doing that.
But and this person makes a great point. The argument will always be Americans don't want to do this work. Really? Factory work in a bakery? Construction jobs? Americans don't want to do those jobs? Working in slaughterhouses? Really? Meat packing? They don't want to work there? Really?
How do we build anything in this country before we... All the people got here like, I don't want to do any of the jobs. You mean they want to be paid properly?
So this person says, no, it's that Americans don't want to work for a third of what their grandparents earned in real dollars in their own country. Is that wrong?
Jimmy, I want to just point this out.
That has 3,000 likes.
Do you know how bad things have gotten? Here's the thing that really hit home for me, how bad things got when I was watching the Bill Burr and Billy Pumpkin's brother get together. And I went, my God, back in the day, you could be a guy who has a wife and family in a house and then go get another secret wife and family in another house.
Yes.
And supported by being a traveling musician. That's how far. Now no one can have any house.
Right.
You ever hear anybody going to jail for bigamy ever?
Yeah.
My girlfriend never even heard of that term.
Blue collar people having two families, secret. So
like they're CIA, they got two families. No one can afford to do that.
Bimbo owns Hostess, Sara Lee, and Entenmann's. So that, remember she said this is Bimbo Bakery? Bimbo owns Hostess, Sara Lee, and Entenmann's as well. How much of the labor force has been illegal immigrants all this time?
Yeah, yeah.
These businesses need to be prosecuted. This is not an accident. They lobby to keep immigration work visas scarce so that they have a cheap and compliant workforce that can't organize.
Okay, Purdue, they paid Purdue to do this, recall, with tax incentives to fire the American workforce and bring in illegals less money. That was incentivized by the government to them. So the way a business views that is, I have to do it, much like the H-1B thing. You have to do it. You can't not do it because it's business now. So the state is doing that on purpose. They're creating perverse incentives for gain of function research, replacing the jobs, all kinds of crazy shit. So killer AI.
I love this is not an accident. They lobby to keep immigration work visas scarce so that they have a cheap and compliant workforce they can compel through fear. Shame on anyone who wants to keep this system in place. Revise the laws. Yes, but do not say we need to support human trafficking in order to preserve our junk food habits.
So the cocaine I did back in the early 2000s was more humane and fair trade than any Twinkies. Is what I'm picking up from this.
So, I'm pro-immigration. I'm pro-immigrant. Nobody wants to kick anybody out of this country who's been here for 20 years and raised a family and provided for their kids. That's not what this is about. This is about in the last few years, they have flooded this country because the labor market got tight and unions started to catch on. Amazon was able to organize a union. People at Starbucks were able to form a union. That's what this is about. They're afraid of American workers getting power. In the middle of the biggest income disparity in the world, Jeff Bezos has a yacht bigger than a football field. So does Mark Zuckerberg. Bigger than a football field. These people who lecture you about climate change have yachts with 4 gigantic diesel engines in them. A yacht. You know, Mark, Jeff Bezos' yacht is so big, it comes with a support yacht. That's a fact. Look it up.
How many immigrants does it hold?
Right. So this idea that these are only jobs Americans will do any job. I worked construction. I worked brickwork. There's very few jobs harder than that. I was in Chicago, 100-degree heat, 90% humidity, on top of a building, had to carry buckets of brick and cement up 4 or 5 flights of stairs. It was not easy.
Yeah, but they pay you.
But they paid me. And the people I worked with, bricklayers and tuck pointers, they all got paid. They got paid enough to buy a house and have kids. And even some of them, if they worked on the weekends doing side jobs, they could afford a summer home on a lake in Wisconsin. But they worked their ass off every day. I grew up in a time when blue-collar workers owned summer homes on a lake in Wisconsin, and they had speedboats, and we'd go up to their house. Regular blue-collar people, because they worked every day of their fucking lives. But now that became too expensive. And so the capitalists, the corporations, like, no, we got to. And so that's what this is all about. That's what this is all about. And so I don't know how the same people who scream we got to raise the minimum wage could also scream that, well, we can't get rid of the most vulnerable exploited labor. We got to have slave labor.
Yeah, someone's going to exploit them. We might as well have Twinkies. See, here's the thing with the hit to the economy is like, oh, the Twinkies are gone, but American jobs aren't being lost, are they? Those were never American jobs, it turns out.
Right.
So, like, watch that Bukele speech. It's great because they were like, no, you can't just do that. And he said, we'll take the hit just to get rid of the corruption. And everybody seems to be happy with him that I've ever met from El Salvador.
So when he's saying that he's talking about the president of El Salvador. So here, I want to show you. So I want to show you. And the news is completely repeating the woke agenda's talking points on this immigration.
It's not even woke.
It's not even woke.
The Great Society. It's called.
Right. It's from corporations who want to exploit labor. And in 2014, Bernie Sanders said that open borders are a Koch brothers scheme, meaning a billionaire corporation scheme to get cheap labor and undercut union workers and then the corporation scares the hell out of those workers so they can't ever demand more wages or better working conditions, and they can't ever organize into a union because they'll report them to ICE and get them kicked out of the country. So that's why they love illegal immigrants to be their workers at places like Sara Lee and Hostess and Entenmann's and construction work and meatpacking places and farms, because they can exploit them. And they can scare them, and they could pay them a lot less. That's what this is about. We finally have a tight labor market in America. Workers are starting to get a little power, so they can start to get their fair share of the profits, and we can start to rebuild our middle class.
Well,
when I was a guy who sold shoes at Sears could have a house and send his kids to college. When I was a kid, a guy who sold lawnmowers at Sears could have. So I'm just saying that there's lots to go around, except workers haven't had a real raise since 1980. And there used to be workers' pay was connected to their productivity. But that stopped in about 1980. So productivity kept going up and wages stayed flat. And so that's why we don't really have a middle class anymore, and people can't afford anything. But millennials can't afford a house. None of them think they can buy a house. So here's the media, Dana Bash, who lied and said Joe Biden wasn't demented, who lied and said the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, who lied and said Russiagate was real, who lied and said the Ukraine war was about what it wasn't about, lied about Syria, now there's a Al Qaeda guy running Syria and so they just lied about Iraq, lied about Libya, and now they're lying to you about immigration. And here's the new head of immigration, Homan, and he's going to straighten her out on national TV. So let's watch this.
How many deportations do you think that you can carry out this year? Last year, for example, the Biden administration did deport about 270,000 people, which is the most since 2014. I know you said ICE has not been doing its job, but there have been a lot of deportations? What's going to happen coming up?
Turns out not true.
That is not accurate. The Biden administration is hiding the numbers. If you look at those removal numbers, over 80% were Border Patrol apprehensions on the border that were immediately removed. They weren't ICE removals. So if you look at what ICE has done into.
So he mumbles a lot. He likes to put a handful of marbles in his mouth before he goes on television, which is unfortunate.
He's got a small mouth.
Well, there's unfortunate, but I'm going to tell you what he was saying. What he was saying. What he was saying is that those weren't ICE deportations. Those were people being turned away at the border, which is a lot different. So they're conflating those numbers and saying those are ICE deportations because that's what the Biden administration wanted people to think.
Well, we know it's not true because why are all these illegals here then?
That's right. And he didn't want you to know that he was literally flying in undocumented migrants on airplanes. Hundreds of thousands of them. The Biden administration did that. We reported it on this show.
Hey, LA, did you get your $700 yet?
You get your $700 for your house? Yeah. Here
Morons.
We go. In the United States, under 4 years of President Biden, they have the lowest numbers of removals in the history of the agency.
So under 4 years of President Biden, they had the lowest numbers of removals of illegal immigrants in the history of their agency. Okay, here we go.
Despite a historic illegal crisis on the southern border.
Despite an historic spike in illegal immigrants, they had the lowest numbers ever. Okay.
So they can claim 240,000, whatever removals. That's simply not the fact. And under the Trump administration, were there fewer removals? Yes. And why was that? Because we secured the border. We weren't releasing millions of people in the United States to have to go find and remove. So it doesn't matter how many people were deported, it's how many people were released in this country, and millions were released into this country by the Biden administration that were not released by the Trump administration.
I just want to be clear. I'm not obviously getting these numbers out of thin air. They are coming from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency. You're saying,
and of course, I never give any scrutiny to anything anybody from the government ever says. I'm never skeptical of it, which is why I told you ivermectin was horse paste instead of a miracle drug for human beings, which is why I told you hydroxychloroquine was fish tank cleaner, except instead of a miracle drug for human beings. So all those things, she doesn't question ever. Whatever the government tells her to say, she just says it.
Yeah. Well,
she's a stenographer. And a repeater. She's not a journalist. So she's saying, I'm just letting you know where I get these numbers from. And you're not skeptical of those numbers or find out what they really mean. He's telling you what they really mean. What do you want to say?
I just want you to know I'm an Ozempic puppet. I don't I don't pull these out of thin air. It's put inside me by my betters.
What is that stat?
It's loaded into me like a teleprompter.
What? Okay.
that they're giving us false information?
Talking, where do those removals come from?
Did you hear her?
Call my grandma a liar?
Yeah.
They are coming from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency. You're saying that they're giving us false information?
Talking, where do those removals come from? And they're not interior ICE removals. 80% of those removals were arrested by Border Patrol. So ICE didn't make the arrest, Border Patrol did, and they were removed by ICE on the southern border.
Understood.
Okay, understood. I didn't look into those numbers at all. I just took them at face value, and I didn't put them in any context for our audience. I just repeated them, whatever the government said. I didn't have, even though I have 40 interns working for me and 50 producers, none of us looked into any of this. Just like how Chris Cuomo didn't look into ivermectin. He said we were lied to instead of doing his own Google search on what ivermectin was. Just like all that stuff. Just like that. Yeah. Whatever they said, I just repeat it. It's your job to find out what it actually means and put it in context. But they're not journalists at CNN, which is why they just had to fire a couple of hundred more people, because people know that now. They're not journalists. They're teleprompter chimps.
Yeah.
So there he was. He had to straighten the news person out. Oh, you're supposed to embarrass the government guy, not the other way around. You empty-headed
of embarrassment.
You empty-headed teleprompter chimp.
She goes, are you calling them a liar?
Are you calling them a liar?
That's your journalist instincts.
Yes.
Is to go to gossipy middle school girl mode.
Yes.
That's how you handle it. You don't go, well, why is it they saying a different number? You go, why did they have that number? And then we can learn together. Oh, what are you saying? They're liars? Is this a Trump? It would be Trump.
You're saying that the U.S. government they're liars? That's exactly what she did. Okay, over to Steph.
Okay.
So